Good morning. Well, yesterday, having done the Valued Living questionnaire, the area of my life that is really important, but at the moment is coming up wanting, is that of fun and humour. So I did a laughing yoga session last night, and I've also rewritten the lyrics to Elvis Costello's I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea, and I'm recording it later as I don't need to go to Waitrose with my family as a pop video. So I won't be showing you that in the next coming days, but hope you managed to get the questionnaire done too. What about you, Lee?
Hi, yes, so I noticed a bit of a gap in the area of education, and so I've signed up to a language app called Duolingo, and I'm going to try and see if I can remember some O-level French. And I've done my first session and it was actually great fun, so I'm going to commit to doing that for the next 7 days and see what happens. Okay, so now on to today's video, which is called Curiosity.
And today we're going to take a moment, because we're on day 17, so we're kind of at that halfway point, of becoming a little bit curious about some of the barriers that get in the way of us connecting with who or what matters to us during this period of isolation. So this is an opportunity to rethink some of those values, and we're going to explore what some of the barriers are to us putting energy into achieving the goals that we've set ourselves earlier on this journey. So what are some of the things that get in the way of us connecting with our values? And luckily, Russ Harris has come up with 2 fantastic acronyms that help me explain this to you quite simply. And the first one is fear. And fear kind of represents some of the barriers that stop us connecting from our values. And then we're going to look at dare, which are some of those things that might help us reconnect with them or achieve some of the goals that are like little GPS points on the way to us reaching or getting to our preferred destination. So fear is kind of a reminder that we fuse very easily with unhelpful thoughts inside our minds. And we've looked at this in days 10 and 11 with hooked and unhooked. So maybe one of the reasons that we don't get stuff done and we don't achieve our goals is because we fuse with an unhelpful thought such as, this is too hard, or I'm never going to be able to do this, or other people are going to be better at this than I am. Maybe the goal that you've set yourself, the goal that is kind of moving you towards your value, maybe that goal is a little bit excessive. Maybe it's too big. Maybe it kind of means that we question whether or not we've got the right skills and resources to actually achieve that goal. And maybe those resources include time and money at the moment too. I think a real big one, a real big barrier to us not getting these goals, not moving towards these goals, is avoidance. We find it very difficult to sit with uncertainty, and we don't like as human beings to experience discomfort. And very often when we're challenging ourselves with a goal, when we're moving towards a value, that discomfort and that fear come along for the ride with that challenge. And lastly, maybe this halfway point is an opportunity to think about whether that value that you're moving towards, maybe you feel some remoteness from that value. Maybe you've kind of forgotten what it was that meant a lot to you about it, or lost touch with what its meaning was, what was meaningful about that value to begin with. So this is an opportunity at the halfway point to think about whether or not we're fusing with unhelpful thoughts, thinking about whether or not the goals that we've set ourselves are excessive, think about whether or not we're putting all of our energy into actually avoiding the fear and discomfort that can come along for the ride, or whether we've just lost touch with actually what was meaningful about that value to begin with. So now we're going to explore the acronym of DARE, which kind of reminds me a little bit of courage, and courage being fear walking. So the first one is thinking about those skills that we learned earlier on this journey around diffusion. How can we unhook ourselves from the unhelpful thoughts that come along for the ride, remembering that our brain's job is to keep us safe at all costs. So it'd rather tell us that we can't do something than actually have us risk putting ourselves in an emotionally unsafe position. So remember those diffusion, unhooking skills that we learnt about thanking our mind for coming up with that thought, noticing our thoughts as mental events, as just thoughts, two synapses pinging together, rather than attaching so much meaning to them. Remembering the difference between thoughts and thinking, and see if we can just name those thinking styles that can get us into so much bother, such as judgment and criticism. And lastly, just maybe to remind ourselves that our brains are a little bit like a radio, and that we can sometimes tune into certain radio stations and frequencies for far too long than is good for our mental and emotional well-being. So just inviting you to notice if you've tuned into radio doom and gloom for a little bit longer, and remember to use your breath and your senses to ground yourself to the present moment before you then tune into another one. So this isn't about getting rid of, this is about choosing what we choose to pay attention to. And then just think about acceptance. We put so much energy into trying to get rid of discomfort and this emotional turmoil and our overthinking. And let's just see whether or not we can practice acceptance of this. Because if we accept it and make room for it, if we bring some curiosity to it, it softens at the edges and it tends to persist less. So can we allow these emotions to come and pass? Can we allow these thoughts to come and pass like leaves on a stream or clouds in the sky? And lastly, maybe revisit this value that maybe you set yourself earlier on this journey, and see whether or not you've set yourself some realistic or unrealistic goals as you move towards it. So if you lack some of the skills that you need to achieve these GPS points along the way, maybe think about ways in which you could brainstorm those with maybe a loved one to come up with some ideas, or break that goal down and ladder it into smaller tasks so that you can achieve them bit by bit. Or maybe even set yourself a new goal that's still in line with your values but is more realistic. See if you can embrace and connect with who or what really matters to your life. Now's a really lovely opportunity to ask yourself, is it meaningful? Is it aligned with my values? Is it moving me in the right direction? And fundamentally, it comes back to that willingness. Am I willing to make room for all of the feelings and the discomfort that's going to come along for the ride as I challenge myself to lead a valued life? And can I experience this stuff as opposed to put lots of energy into trying to disrupt it, or to avoid it, or to try and get rid of it altogether? So I guess the question is if you are going for it and you're going to stand in that arena and you're going to start to live a full life, then do you want to put your energy into trying to avoid stuff? Because that can be really life draining. Or would you rather put your energy into doing something that actually enhances your life? And so maybe spend a little bit of time today revisiting those values that we looked at, I think on day 4 of this journey, and start to think about if you've fused with anything along the way that stops you from moving towards that value. Maybe that goal is excessive, or you're trying to avoid discomfort, or you've forgotten why it's a good value at all, and instead think about ways in which you can unhook yourself from those unhelpful thoughts, accept your emotions and thoughts rather than act on them. Again, come back to setting realistic goals, but most importantly, see if you can embrace your values during this period of self isolation, because that bit you can control, where you put your hands and feet, and who or what really matters to you. Now is a great opportunity to think about those questions. Anyway, really lovely to spend some time with you, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Many thanks.